Warm welcome to Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. My name is Thia Powers, and I'm bringing you a sutta tonight, the third in our summer sutta series. And I also just need to throw in here how wonderful Tuare Sala was last week. She's a bit of a hard act to follow, so I'll do my best. So sometimes we might feel in our lives that we're in a consistent state of hurry, particularly if we meditate a lot and then we move into the day and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to accomplish, and we can fall into a rhythm of completing one task in order to hurry to the next thing. Does this sound familiar? Even in our meditation practices, sometimes we can find ourselves racing ahead or striving towards some goal, some perceived achievement. And even though the path has some urgency, that we do contemplate that we won't be here forever, that we don't know when we will leave. We also know there's no way to rush this process. No matter how rushed we may feel. Not only that it's not only wiser to slow down, check in with your heart, and take your time with this, but it's more enjoyable. It just feels better. And that's where the healing part that I mentioned at the beginning comes in for me. It really feels very healing to do what we just did, to sit together and to breathe and to process our lives and let it go, let it go. So when we do that, we're creating conditions that position us for further growth, but we're not grasping after it. We're trying to make it happen. And so tonight we'll hear about how to create those conditions. And we'll hear about it from the Buddha, what he thought about it. Even though tonight's talk is about a rigorous process or practice, it's also about compassion and kindness and relaxing into right relationship with things just the way they are in our lives and in our practice. Because if we're practicing with a lot of aversion and pushing away and wanting it to be different, we're kind of wasting our time unless we can look at that and hold it with our heart, hold that and cradle it with some compassion. In this sutta tonight, the Buddha advises his closest circle of monks. And at this time, there were only 10 monks following him. He tells them how to approach their practice. And you may notice that these instructions are strikingly similar to the instructions that we still give today, 26 centuries later. The sutta I'm bringing you tonight is called the Bhaddekaratta Sutta. And I chose this for several reasons. The first is that I like the way it rolls off the tongue. I like the name of it, and I'd never heard of it. And since I'd never heard it mentioned, I decided to start studying it several weeks ago. And I think it's going to be worthy of our time tonight. A third reason is that it's unusual in the sense that we think this is the first time that the Buddha puts emphasis on staying with what he calls presently arising states or phenomena. And it's what we've come to refer to as present moment awareness. So there's a little bit of difference there, but for now, we'll go with that. The term bhaddekaratta appears in only a few places in the teachings of the Buddha. And the exact meaning of the title, bhaddekaratta, is still sort of a puzzle because scholars have argued for years about what exactly it meant. But the consensus seems to be now that this is a term that the Buddha coined himself. It was a sort of slang that he used, which I think is kind of interesting. And it describes a stage of development in one's meditation practice. It indicates someone who is determined to cultivate the practice of insight. A yogi or meditator who is a bhaddekaratta is an engaged witness of the continuous flow of phenomena in each present moment. And here's the key, without getting lost in the story. So not getting hooked. That's the tricky part. So very engaged, but not hooked. And that's still the challenge today. So not much has changed. One more interesting aspect is that scholars translate this directly as a single excellent night. And a bhaddekaratta would be a person who is a single excellent nighter. So an excellent one-nighter has developed an ability to consistently practice with this steady determination, not too tight, not too loose, but completely absorbed for a single excellent night, in which we presume is a 24-hour period. So we've looked at the meaning and the translation of bhaddekaratta. Let's touch on the context based on the time and place of this, and then we'll look at the core teachings of this short sutta. Afterwards, we can hear a summary of what the Buddha says the core teachings are. So let's explore the context. In this story, the Buddha and his 10 monks are residing at Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. And we hear that a lot in the suttas, that they're hanging out there. This is in India. And when I looked this up, I found out this place still exists. It's still beautiful, and there's not much left of the place where the Buddha stayed, but I'd like for you to see a picture of it. Can you guys see that? Try again. No picture? Too bad. It's a beautiful park with a lot of trees and some old ruins, and it looks quite magical. So when you look up Jeta's Grove, it's kind of amazing. People still go there. People still meditate there, Jeta. So here is my disclaimer. As I read this sutta and I looked at these pictures of Jeta's Grove, I envisioned our Sangha to be the ones hearing this teaching for the first time. I imagined the setting based on some of the photos that I looked at. And so tonight I'll embellish the contextual details slightly based on what I've read about the time and place of this teaching. But Sutta number 131 will be presented exactly as scholars have translated it for us. So the bhaddekaratta begins. It's twilight. And we, the students of this new teaching, although there were probably no women there, have taken our seats on a stone floor, on mats or folded pieces of cloth, and we've adjusted our robes. We're sitting still, crickets are chirping, and in the center of our circle are some butter lamps. It's the rainy season, and we are with our beloved teacher, the Buddha. In the distance, a goat herder tends his charges in the rain, the bells around their necks softly chiming as the shepherd brings them to safety for the evening and the sun sets. The Buddha enters the room and takes his seat. We bow. He looks around the room at each of us and begins simply, "Bhikkhus?" We say, "Venerable." Tonight, he says, "I will teach you the summary of one who has had a single excellent night. Listen, attend closely to what I'm about to say." He says, "Let not a person revive the past or on the future build their hopes. The past is left behind. The future has not been reached." And here's the phrase it turns on. "Instead, with insight, let them see each presently arising state. Let them know that and be sure of that. Invincible, unshakable. Today, the effort must be made. Tomorrow, death may come. Who knows? We do not bargain with mortality and cannot keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, day and by night, he or she, I am telling you, has had a single excellent night." It says the monks were satisfied and delighted with this instruction, as it often says. The Buddha goes on to explain, how do we do this? How do we dwell in this way? Notice he doesn't say meditate, but he says dwell because he's talking about a 24-hour period. So there's a lot of time to work with this. It's reported that he said, "Friends, how does one not trace back the past?" He thinks, such was my eye in the past, such forms, such was my ear and such sounds, such was my mind and my ideas. He's remembering all this wonderful stuff. But without my consciousness being bound by cravings, there is no lust for such and no delight, because such a noble one is not bound up by cravings and desires. He does not trace back the past. So he's not yearning here. He's moved on. And friends, how does one not yearn for the future? He thinks my eye may be such in the future and forms may be such. But because he does not so set his heart here, I love that the heart is part of this, the intention of the heart. He does not yearn for the future. He thinks my ear, my nose, my tongue, my body, my mind may be such and such in the future, but he does not so set his heart to this, and so does not delight in that, and so does not yearn for the future. And here's the really interesting part. He goes on to explain the part about being in the present moment and how not to get hooked. Because not only does he not want us in the past or the future, he also does not want us hooked into the present, overly committed and striving. So there's got to be some lightness even in the present. He says, and how, friends, is one not drawn into present things? Whatever I and forms there are, both of these are present. And to that which is present, his consciousness is not bound by desire and craving. And because he is not bound by desire or craving, He's not delighted by them. And since he's not delighted, he's simply not drawn in. He repeats this same phrase as was often done with verbal teachings, since there was not a lot of writing going on. He repeats this for ear and sound, and nose and smells, and tongue and flavor, and body and tangibles, and mind and ideas. Then he rises from his seat, bows to the bhikkhus, and leaves. So no Q&A that night. It says again, the monks were satisfied and delighted with this instruction. So the first time I read this, I thought it was a pretty simple sutta. And each time I read it, it unpacked itself more and more and more. And isn't that the way that these teachings are for us? The instruction for the single excellent nighter is to keep the mind secluded in the presently arising moment and to see the five aggregates, which through other Dharma talks we've heard that the aggregates are what we use to create our sense of self. It's our form, our body, our feelings, emotions, perceptions, the mental activity that's nonstop, and the consciousness that binds it all together. This is what we think ourselves to be, and it's pretty convincing. We can develop the capacity needed, though, to meet each moment fully in a clear and an uncluttered way, a stripped down way where we see the stories float up and we see the attachments arising. We can know what is true, and we can know that most of this is what is called empty phenomena rolling on. I love that term. So not only mindfulness is engaged here of being with the present moment, but wisdom is here to see what is true and what is transient. So this is samadhi, concentration, mind training. So this term, empty phenomena rolling on, is a term that Joseph Goldstein uses a lot, one of my favorite teachers, and it comes from his teacher, one of his teachers, Munindra, who was an Indian Vipassana teacher. Munindra said, we're all empty phenomena rolling on. To sum this up, the Buddha is telling his Sangha, his bhikkhus, to remember to practice his mind training teachings using the aggregates, form, feelings, perception, thoughts, consciousness, and to remain committed, and maybe more importantly, to be willing. He says anything could happen at any time. Just one day and one night of this kind of practice is excellent. Just a day and a night. There's a Tibetan Dzogchen saying that says, the mind's nature is vivid, like a luminous crystal, intrinsically empty, naturally radiant, and ceaselessly responsive. So experiencing emptiness, or being willing to experience emptiness, is also at the heart of these teachings. Because we've let go of the past, we've let go of the future, and we've disassembled the present moment. And so, what's left? Amazingly enough, these teachings on emptiness are the same for us 2,600 years later. When we sit long enough in a focused state, we can drop off some of the churning of the body and the mind. We can sometimes effectively forget the self and become kind of like a mirror that just reflects. Roshi Robert Aldhouse wrote in After Awakening, we don't possess enlightenment, it possesses us. And so when we empty out, it's possible. There's a wholeheartedness and all in attitude about this short sutta that I love. Judy Leaf writes, sometimes people think the Buddha's practices are all about mind trainings and nothing else, but the notion of wholeheartedness is that you really feel this. You feel what you feel completely, and then you let it go. You put it down. That way it moves through you. That's from Train Your Mind, train wholeheartedly. So if we were to aspire to be a bhaddekaratta, a single excellent nighter, we would not exclude any part of our experience. We would remember that truth is unchanging, circumstance is constantly changing. We might utilize ways to rouse energy with breath or movement or skillful thinking. And we would observe the constant flow of simply being. And we would not get hooked by our stories. This is easier said than done, but even a short session of strong determination can be beneficial, kind of like interval training. And for many reasons, we know it's easier to practice in a concentrated way like this when we're secluded or on a residential retreat, which is getting ready to happen for our Sangha in August, where we'll have access to greater solitude. So even though tonight's practice is about serious practice, tonight's talk is about serious practice and not tracing back to the past or leaning into the future, it's also very much about creating balance, about being kind, about knowing when to back off, relax into your own compassion. Having this allowing attitude and meeting ourselves where we are, it's simply more kind. And when we're more kind, we have a bigger chance of sticking with it. So, in closing, the Buddha says, one who dwells thus ardently, by day, by night, untiringly, him the tranquil sage has called the excellent one-nighter. So may we all be bhaddekarattas at some point. Thank you for your ears tonight and for listening to this interesting sutta that I had never heard. And maybe you had never heard. Has anybody ever heard of this sutta, the bhaddekaratta? Debbie? And that's probably it. Joy. Okay, the Dharma leaders. Yeah. So I would like to let that land, and I would love to know how that landed. And if anybody can tell me what a bhaddekaratta is, what the translation is, or what the takeaway was for you. Let's just take a minute to breathe, because there is so much in these. If you have comments, you can chat them in. Denise is saying it's a wholesome one-nighter. And you can also raise your hand. So, Babita, let me ask you to unmute and see if you can unmute.
Thank you. Thank you for the profound talk. It had a lot of takeaways, but two things that stuck with me the most was to be engaged with the complete feeling and then letting go of it. I think I find that very hard because either the fear that I'll get too deep into it, I try to keep a little, whatever feelings arise, I don't want to really feel them completely because I'm so scared that I'll drown in them, whether it is the, sadness or the loneliness, whatever it is. So it was very nice to hear that as a reminder that I need to feel it completely, be engaged with it, and then let it go. And on the whole, the talk was a great reminder how the mind loves to go in the past and crave for the memories of the past, but to be determined to train the mind slowly and steadily to be in the present without a hurry. It was just wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you, Babita. Thank you for sharing. That is such a good observation that it's hard to feel it completely and let it go. But I think sometimes those feelings, when they are acknowledged, they leave all on their own, just simply from being acknowledged. So I think that's the nice part about that. Um, Good medicine. I'm glad. Okay. Um, let's go through our announcements. I'd like to point out that we have met since March of 2020 on Zoom. That is 64 times. And now that we have it down pat, it's time to pivot again. And we will be meeting next week in person and on Zoom. So that may go perfectly and it may not. And I'd like to just ask you in advance for your patience as we reinvent ourselves again so that everybody can be part of the Sangha. All the announcements are on the website, imccharlotte.org. So if I don't hit the details, please go online. Also, if I mention something and it has not been posted yet, know that we post about once a week on Thursdays. We update the website. So if it hasn't been posted, it will be soon. Just check back. Donna, we thank you for generosity. We're self-supporting by donations, and you can find that on the website as well. Tuesday noon sits continue. That will be on Zoom, and that will stay on Zoom until further notice. August 3rd, the registration will close for the IMC summer retreat. So if you're on the fence, jump in. It's about to close. For the in-person meeting next Wednesday, we would request that you be vaccinated and possibly be prepared to wear a mask. We don't know what the turnout will be. And some of the CDC guidelines are asking vaccinated people to wear a mask. So we will have masks and we will do whatever is mindful and wise that night. On September 2nd, there is a book discussion group beginning, and the title of the book is Unbinding by Kathleen Dowling Singh. Please contact Joy Libeth as these groups fill up really fast. September 21st, 28th, and October 5th and 12th, there will be a Beyond the Basics series starting, and it's called Deepening Our Understanding of Samadhi. What a wonderful topic. And that's led by Debbie George, and that's up on the website now. If you have any interest, you can register or contact Debbie. The first Wednesday of each month, we still have the 645 practice discussion group. However, it will be going to in-person only beginning in August. The last Wednesday, 7 p.m. instruction session will be going to in-person only beginning in August. There's also a recorded instruction session on the website if you'd like to check that out. And last, certainly not least, thank you for all the teams of volunteers and the committees, to all the students of the Dharma for making this Sangha possible. This is how the wheel turns, is because of these faces on the screen. So thank you for that. Let me scan and see if there's anything I'm forgetting here. I like this comment. We all seek to be an engaged witness without getting lost in the story. That's a skill. Sangha picnic fell off the list. Oh no. September 18th, 4 to 8 p.m., shelter number 6. And we'll bring a picnic meal that's COVID friendly. And the Sangha will have ice, water, and dessert. If you could bring a water bottle, that'll be simpler for the environment. So I have a poem to, actually, I don't have a poem. I think that I will do a short metta to close us out. So make yourself comfortable and close your eyes. And let's begin by taking a breath or two and bringing that capacity that Twere Sala talked about last week, that capacity for a warm and tender heart, and whatever brings that up for you. She was speaking about trees. It could be the face of your favorite animal or creature. It could be the face of you as a small child. And let your heart soften into that image and repeat in your mind, may I know the causes of happiness. May I experience happiness. Think of someone that is close to you, and as you see their face, wish them well. May you experience happiness and know the causes of what brings happiness. Maybe you see them smiling. And now we turn to neutral folks that we don't know well, but they're in our orbit. We know them. And we wish those people well. May you be happy and know the causes of happiness in your life. Now choose a person that you might have a bit of trouble with. Don't go to the person that you have the most amount of trouble with, but choose someone that maybe it's a little bumpy with and see their face and see them smile. May you be happy and may you know the causes of happiness. May you be happy. Sending wishes now out to all sentient beings without exception. May all beings be happy, experience happiness in their lives, and come to know the causes of happiness. May all beings be free. May any merit that we've generated tonight from this practice be for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you so much for your practice tonight. It's great to see everybody. I'm super excited about next week. And please be well. Good night, everybody.